Okay, so welcome back, everybody. Can I just introduce people who you see on a panel discussion here? So John Garry you will already have met. Just also want to introduce Ruth Obeabuchi and Dan O'Dwyer. Both Ruth and Dan have been involved in previous Citizens' Assemblies. Ruth on the Dublin Citizens' Assembly, the discussion on Dublin Mayor, and Dan O'Dwyer on the Citizens' Assembly on Biodiversity Loss. They've come along today to answer any questions or comments that you might have about their experiences. I'm very pleased and thank them for giving their time this morning to us, but more importantly, giving their time to the Citizens' Assembly process. It is a period now for us to go to yourselves and what you've heard previously and what you might have on your mind. Just before I do that, if it's okay with you, I'm just going to ask Ruth or Dan, or actually both Ruth and Dan, just very quickly, you know, a simple question. I mean, what stood out for yourself, Ruth or Dan, in terms of your experience? What do you think most about your experience in the previous assemblies?
Thank you, Paul. I'm delighted to be here today. I was a member of the Citizens' Assembly on Biodiversity Loss that finished in January of this year, and our report was launched just 2 weeks ago. I very much found that the process of deliberative democracy in the room was evident throughout the process, throughout our meetings here in Malahide, in that around the tables we all had an opportunity to speak our minds. I would have come to the table or come to the process with certain ideas about the topic at hand, so biodiversity loss and the environment and things like that. And throughout the process I had an opportunity to speak with other members at different tables throughout and learn about their experience and their views on things that I would have had views on as well. And we may not always have agreed on things, it was a great space to be able to discuss it and to be able to come up with consensus on certain items. The facilitators in particular were great at doing that, making sure that everybody's voice was heard at the tables, that everybody had an opportunity to speak up, and if there were opposing views at the tables, that we had a chance to air them and come up with general consensus from the tables and questions to ask of all the experts and the support that staff that were here in the room with us. I found it very useful to be able to during the deliberative sessions, be able to just put a hand up if we had a question at the table, and some of the support group, the advisory group, would come down and speak to us and explain things that we may not have understood fully from some of the speakers that we had. It was a very positive experience in my view. I'm looking at faces, and a year ago I started this process, and I would have been sitting where you're sitting and not really knowing what was ahead of us, to be honest with you. Excited about the process, but a little bit apprehensive and not wondering what would come over the course of the meetings. But the Secretariat staff and the staff here in the hotel were very supportive of us, and they were always available to us to answer any questions we had and to make us feel comfortable. And if you have any questions at any stage, your facilitators at the tables will help you, the Secretariat staff will help you, the speakers and the expert advisory group, as they were called during our assembly, are there to assist you as well. So from my point of view, it was a very positive experience, so I hope you all very much enjoy it.
Thanks, Dan. I know Dan was a member of the steering group as well, that we just outlined today. So, Ruth, do you want to just make any comments, experience, please?
Hello, good morning, everybody. My name is Ruth Obeabuchi. I was a member of the past Dublin Citizens' Assembly meeting. That's the one that elected Dublin mayor, a democratically elected Dublin mayor for the whole Dublin city. It was a very positive experience for me. I really enjoyed the time we all deliberated on. Just like Dan said, it was very interactive, and as an African and an Irish, very inclusive, because there were a lot of people from diverse cultures, diverse different nationalities. So it was a very positive experience, and the Secretariat staff were very supportive. And just like Dan said, on each table we have councillors that were there to guide us, to ask questions, and I felt included. Things that we are not sure of, if you raise up your hand, they are there to answer questions, and it was a very positive experience for me. As a nurse by background, sometimes I come from night shift for the meeting, and I really, really enjoyed it. I'll say to you, enjoy every bit of it.
And thanks to Helen and Dan, who will be here for this engaged discussion, question and answers over the next while. Okay, you have submitted some questions and answers, and you've had a discussion at your table in terms of some questions and answers. I'm going to call from the relevant tables just people who we have here. We can see access to some of the questions you had. So if I call on yourself and your table, we have a roving mic. Just say your first name and your question. So the first one I'm going to go to is table 1, and Helen has a question, if we can pose it, please. We have a mobile on, or a microphone.
Thank you. Thank you very much. My name is Helen, and my question is, how can we ensure long-term implementation of recommendations made by the Assembly?
Okay, I might just ask John to make a comment on his experience and indeed internationally, and then myself or Carl can make a comment.
Well, ultimately, it's up to citizens' assemblies are initiated by someone. They're initiated by an existing political system and democratically elected politicians who form a government, and they set up citizens' assemblies, and they give it a remit, and and by setting it up, they're giving a commitment to follow through. And there has been significant follow through in the Irish example of citizens' assemblies. You know, citizens' assemblies have recommended change on same-sex marriage and the provision of abortion. And the governments didn't just run away from that and hide behind the couch. They set up referendums, which then led to the population as a whole voting to liberalise, and then it was legislated for. So there's good kind of form on politicians setting up citizens' assemblies and then following through. I mean, it's not, you know, the governments don't commit to in advance to implementing every single recommendation that might come out of a citizens' assemblies, because some citizens' assemblies make a whole raft of recommendations, and governments are not necessarily bound to put them all into effect, but they're bound to consider them. Not sure if that answers your question or not. It's the best one I can come up with.
Thanks, John. And if I can just add a couple of comments, because I think it's a really good question. I think what we should take, first of all, encouragement from previous assemblies that have happened, and certainly very significant changes have happened in either constitution or legislation in Ireland. So that's a good sign. Ultimately, it is, as John said, it is the power of the elected members of the Oireachtas and government who have the decision making in relation to what recommendations they take on board. And that's the way it should be. They're democratically elected. But I do think as we go along the way as well, and Colin and myself will help this process too, there will be a judgment we will have to make as we go along about, some people asked me last night, how many recommendations are we allowed to make? There's no number, but a judgment we make along the way around, you know, is it 180, is it 150, is it 10, you know, will be important to try to influence the Oireachtas members to act on the recommendations that we're making. So we'll try to help people understand that as we go along, to have you know, a good suite of recommendations coming out of this process. But ultimately, we should always say it, the decision making is with the elected members of the Oireachtas ultimately. Can I just keep, sorry Colin, any comment? Please do.
Just to add though, that if you refer to the terms of reference for the Citizens' Assembly, there's a commitment in there by the Oireachtas which set the terms of reference that it will consider the report and will respond to the report and recommendations of the Citizens' Assembly. And it typically does that by referring the report that comes out of this Assembly to an Oireachtas committee. And that is where it's given full consideration. And similarly then the government will receive a copy of the report, and it also will respond to the recommendations, and it will indicate which recommendations it accepts and how it's going to go about implementing those recommendations.
Okay, just keep process moving. Table 11, I have Aveline who has a question, please.
Do I stand up? Oh. Hi, good morning. My name is Aveline. So I'm very privileged, and I realise that being here is a huge privilege this morning with you all. And I suppose my question just comes from that with this privilege, I feel that we have a responsibility, and I'm learning that we have a responsibility to be educated and to educate myself more on drug use with each session that we have. So I was just wondering, like, obviously we only have 6 weekends together. Is there any recommended reading or extra additional reading we can do outside of it in our additional time that you would recommend that would be maybe unbiased or impartial?
So, Aveline, thanks for the question. One of the things that we're conscious of is the amount of material that you need to familiarise yourselves with. and there'll be a certain amount of material we can present within the course of the weekend meeting. There'll be additional material that we will be able to provide you for background reading, etc., on the members area of the website. So we will work carefully to ensure that there's a balance and a fairness and a consistency in how we provide that material. But we will certainly be providing all of that. And in addition, you'll be getting a lot of reading material, I suspect, when we open the public consultation process. In a week or two, we'll be launching a public consultation process. I expect there'll be many hundreds, if not thousands, of submissions coming in, and that will, I'm certain, keep you busy as well.
Again, thank you, Helen, and thanks, Evelyn, for those questions. I'm going to go to table 2, and I think it's Loris has a question there.
Oh, hi, my name is Loris, and the question from table 2 is, will we have the opportunity to get an insight into major changes made elsewhere in this area and how successful they have been, and particularly Portugal, because it has been spoken about a lot in the media recently? Thank you.
The answer is yes. We will have opportunities right throughout the proceedings to listen to international experiences. Beginning today, we have, in fact, 2 presenters today and tomorrow from the European Drugs Agency in Portugal, who are here to speak on an EU-wide perspective. But later in the process, we will have invited guest speakers from other parts of the EU, including Portugal. So yes is the answer. We haven't bottomed out on all of the details yet, but I fully expect Portugal and its model will be featuring in the proceedings.
And thank you, Loris. I'm going to go to table 5, question from Fred.
Just had a question about the budget. So what is the budget allocated for this implementation of new policy for the drug use?
Not enough is the answer to that one for me. But no, there is an answer, sorry.
Can I clarify, Fred? Are you asking about the budget for the Citizens' Assembly or the budget for implementing policies? The whole process. So the budget is a work in progress. There is sufficient, in contrast to what Paul says, no, there probably is more than an adequate budget for the proceedings, but it depends on a lot of variables. We will be publishing full details of the budget on the website as we get a better sense on expenditure. But it's safe to say it is a very significant investment, by the taxpayer to ensure that this process runs smoothly, and we'll be doing everything to ensure value for money, but it is a fully funded process, and we'll be publishing all details of our budget expenditure on our website for full transparency.
Can I go to, and thanks, Fred, for that. Can I go to table 4? I think it's Martin.
Good morning, Martin's my name, and questions from table 4 are: will we hear presentations on why people use drugs, the history and statistics around them, and why responses have not worked to date?
Yeah, and this straight again question is yes, including today, Johanna Ivers will be presenting a very detailed experience of why people use drugs, and the information and data later on, the Health Research Board and European data will have very significant. And in fact, there was a related question, if I can just try address it here, was who are the members of the, what is the Health Research Board and who are the members of it here? And we will shortly have a presentation from Brian Galvin. So I think that question came from table 10, Eamon. So just say we will have presentation from the Health Research Board who can set out what they do and the information that they have. So just trying to capture as many questions as we go along. If I can now go to table 3, and Kerry has a question, please.
Just in terms of the steering group, is there a formal terms of reference for the steering group, or is that something the steering group develop or draw up themselves?
There is a formal terms of reference, and we'll email that to you even before this weekend is over. We'll send out those terms of reference.
Okay, that's great. Thank you.
Thank you, Kerry, for that. Question again, I guess, on process table 6. I haven't got the name, but it was a question related to when the recommendations are formed, how they come to fruition. But can I just go to table 6 if somebody wants to pose that question, please?
Hi, Tom is my name. Michael, the issue I brought up the question about really was a lot of investment, time, money, expertise is going into this. Then it moves from this arena into a political arena, i.e. the Oireachtas, and then that's broken down and given to a subcommittee. I just see there's really the umbilical cord is cut when this process is finished. And I just wonder, there's nobody there to safeguard if we make 2 recommendations, 10 or 20. And I know also that there is a political side where you just mentioned funding. So I think there should be something from the Assembly. I know it's a political, the Oireachtas is a political situation, but there should be somebody minding that along the way. What will that subcommittee do? Will they meet on their own? Will they even refer back to the Citizens' Assembly for a clarification or for anything else? Or will it just be like a lot of reports the government do in times of crisis, just put them there, have a look at them and just move on?
Well, I think the track record of previous citizens' assemblies, including the 2 that were run last year, is that the government and the Oireachtas both treat the recommendations of the Assembly with a huge amount of respect and regard. So it's one of the reasons why the Citizens' Assembly model in Ireland is so well recognised internationally as being a successful example, as John Gary said earlier, of deliberative democracy in action. It's because the Oireachtas and the government both treat this with a huge degree of respect. There will be accountability in the sense that the Oireachtas Committee and the government will give a detailed response on the public record in the Dáil, and there, as we've seen over the years, there is significant follow-through in terms of implementing the reports and recommendations of the Assembly. So I would be confident this will follow in a long line of successful citizens' assemblies that have taken place.
And I know table 9, I think Ciara and other tables have similar questions there, so I'll try group those up under the answer that Carl just gave, just on the basis of trying to get as many as we can. If I can move to table 14, I have a question from Abigail, and we'll try to take the question from John. We'll take the 2 questions together at that table, please. Abigail and John.
Hi, good morning. My name is Abigail. The question that we had on this table was with regards to drug use. The term drug could be quite broad, and I suppose we're just looking on clarity in terms of, is it just substance misuse, or is it prescription drugs, or is it alcohol? And I suppose a sub-question under that was, again, 6 meetings a bit short. If we're going to go into all of these things, is it going to be scripted, or are we going to address everything, or will there be another session for this later on? So that was kind of our question.
Thank you. I think you've probably covered both questions. Is that fair enough? The 6 meetings? Go ahead if somebody wants. I think the question was, would 6 meetings be enough to do that in the process? Yeah. Thanks, Abigail, and thanks to the table for the question. Just a few quick comments from me. The terms of reference for us set out what area we're asked to tackle, and it specifically references illicit drugs. Illicit drugs, and the schedule of illicit drugs is referenced in the 1977 Misuse of Drugs Act. You are right, there's never a fine line on these things, because some, and Colin and myself were talking about this yesterday, some prescribed drugs can actually be got through illicit channels as well. But we have been very clearly directed, it doesn't cover alcohol, it doesn't cover tobacco. It's very clearly, that was a decision. It's not up for change. That's a decision of the Oireachtas, so we're very clear about that. We know there's interrelationships. We know that it's never simple, and there's big cross relationships with mental health issues as well. But specifically, we're not tackling alcohol, it's not tobacco, it's illicit drug use. Hope that helps, Abigail, on that piece of it. Yeah. Do you want to take the 6 meetings?
The 6 meetings is the classic number of meetings for a citizens' assembly. It seems like a tall order or a tall challenge to try and get through everything in 6 meetings, but we know from past experience that this is doable, right? But it does take focus, and it takes a really well-organised process. It takes a really kind of strong partnership between the members of the Assembly and the chairperson and the steering group and the secretariat and the various advisory groups that are helping us in the process. So it takes a lot of effort, but it is achievable, and we're determined that this is going to be a successful Assembly that will work efficiently and with focus, and we will get to the point in October where I'm confident that you will feel confident concluding the process and making a recommendation. So that's our intention.
Thank you, Abigail. And can I go to Bill and table 9, please, for a question?
Hello, my name is Bill, and we wondered at our table the whole area of confidentiality. How important is confidentiality with regard to the Assembly? I.e., how much are we allowed to disclose to people outside of this group?
Thanks, Bill, and that's a really good question. We have set out, I think there's a kind of guideline rules document that may have been shared at your table. If it's not shared already, we'll do it. But specifically on that, there's an answer, which is, look, first of all, we want to allow the debate to happen in here throughout the whole process in a very safe way. So it would be clear that we'd be asking you not to publicly comment on the specific issues that we're addressing during the Assembly process. Obviously after it, you feel free, but during the process we'd ask everybody not to make specific comments or express views. Let's all get through this in a very safe way and deliberative way. Of course, feel free, people will use social media to say, I'm at the Assembly process, you know, here, enjoying it, whatever. You know, that's all general commentary, but we would expect not to make specific comments about issues as we're going through the process. Indeed, in terms of media or anything like that, it will be held through the Secretariat and myself in terms of public media commentary. Is that okay in terms of an answer? Clear? Thank you.
Yeah. Could I just add to that? We have published a set of rules and procedures of the Assembly, and those will be circulated at the coffee break at 11, so you'll have a chance to read them. And there is a rule in there about media and public commentary. There's also a rule in there about the right of members to have their privacy protected. So if anybody in this room, either individually or collectively, feels that you're coming under attention, unwanted attention or undue pressure from outside groups, that's something that we do take very seriously. So your privacy will be protected in terms of data protection legislation, but also in terms of any pressure that you might feel is going to be exerted on you by, for example, you know, groups that have a point of view or want to lobby in favour of one issue or another. So that is not part and parcel of the Citizens' Assembly process. The deliberative democracy process is intended to be a safe space, as Paul said earlier, and as John said earlier, a safe space for careful and thoughtful deliberation. So we'll be taking a grim view if anybody is approached by lobby groups or others to pressurise them in a particular direction.
Thanks, Colin. That's a good point, that last point. You should not feel pressurised or, you know, any sense of people coming at you to you know, and that happens. So, you know, you should not. And if it does happen, please let us know. Can I go to Niamh on table 8, please?
Hi everyone, my name's Niamh. We just had 2 questions. I think one was kind of answered. So we were asking around, will there be discussion around the positive impacts of certain drugs, or is it solely focused on the negative impacts? And then our other question was around the defining what is illicit drugs. I think that was kind of tackled in that table 14 question.
Yeah, and a quick comment on Cathal. Even in the lived experience group, we will have a voice, a person that has a view of people who may have a view, people they know that may have a view of, you know, not negative experiences, let's say, of drug use. So that's an advice we want to bring through as well. So, Colin.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think the terms of reference ask the Assembly to look at the drivers of drugs use and public attitudes towards drugs use. So that includes, you know, a spectrum of opinion, some which believes all drugs use is harmful and others that believes some drugs use is not harmful. So we'll be hearing all sides of the argument, or all different perspectives, and we'll be making sure that that balance and fairness in the presentation of perspectives is central to the proceedings. And as Paul said, one of the ways we're doing that is through this lived experience group that is a way in which we can be advised, if you like, by people who have diverse experiences of drugs use.
I'm conscious there's a few questions on this steering group, and I'm anxious that we answer them because we are looking for volunteers. So if I can go to table 13, Jennifer.
Hi there, I'm Jennifer. I think it's been addressed in part already, but I understand the steering group to be an intermediary between the mini public and yourselves. I just wanted to get some more clarity on the agenda of meetings and frequency of meetings and the role in more specific detail, please.
Well, you're right. In a way, it is an intermediary in certain circumstances, but that's not to say that there isn't a very important direct line of communication between each of the 99 members here and the chairman and myself and my team in the secretariat. So there is always a direct channel of communications, and we hope to get to know each and every one of you very well over the course of the proceedings. The steering group then, if you like, is on those occasions when we need to consult with the members, but it's not possible to convene a meeting, even by Zoom, of all 99 people. The steering group will be a point of contact for you when there are particular things to be discussed and agreed on, including the design of the programme for each meeting that takes place between now and October, if that answers your question.
Carl, if I may...
So please do, yeah.
If I may speak to that for a second, Carl has described the function of the steering group. I was a member of the steering group for the Citizens Assembly on Biodiversity Loss. Just to clarify as well, it doesn't add a great amount of work to you. If we met a couple of times between meetings, usually for an hour on Zoom. I had an interest in the workings of the Assembly, and not just the topic itself, but how the Assembly works, so that's why I put my name forward. While you're there as an intermediary between the members and the Secretariat, every member has the ability to talk to the Secretariat, have they a concern or a worry, and they're very responsive and they're very supportive as well. As a member of the steering group, we kind of met ourselves. We kind of had an email thread between ourselves, and we kind of just discussed bits and pieces, not very frequently, but just when we had a concern about something. And we would have raised a few things with the Secretariat as well about the process. Nothing too serious, but just bits and pieces we thought were working well, or things that we thought might have been not working great within the rooms during the meetings. And we found it was a good opportunity for us as 6 people to represent the 100 people. So we would go around the tables or introduce ourselves at our tables at each meeting, just to say I'm a member of the steering group. If you have any concerns, you can talk to any of us or talk directly to the Secretariat yourselves. It's up to yourselves as a steering group how you manage that. There's no pressure comes from the Secretariat or the organiser of the Assembly to put yourself out there more than you're willing to do. But it is an opportunity to get a bit more involved in the working of the background end of the Assembly, if you know what I mean. But I found it a very positive experience as a member of the steering group, purely from the point of view that I would have an interest in how the Assembly runs and the deliberative democracy side of it and the organisation of it. But as I said before, it's really up to yourselves how much of your own time you give in that respect.
Thanks, Dan. And I'm going to take one final question. We have got through a lot and we're similar, so I've aimed to get as much as I could through. One last question from table 15. I think it's Brian.
Hello, Brian Dolan. Regarding lobbying, as you were talking about, Carl, how can we assure that non-biased or leading information is given to us members, given the fact that, as has been talked in the media recently too, there is members of the advisory council are kind of known to be maybe anti-drugs campaigners. So how can we assure that we won't be influenced in a particular direction, given that we're all kind of meant to be coming into this with non-bias to begin with?
I'll take and Colin might want to, and thanks for the question, Brian. I was anxious to be put on the floor. Just first of all, let me restate again, I'm very confident the members that we've got together in the advisory steering group and the fact that they're giving their time, who have a combination of some academic experts, but some people who are practitioners in this whole area. I'm equally acknowledging within the advisory group we have contrasting views. People have publicly expressed views that are diverse and are different. And that's exactly what I wanted to bring to you. So you will hear views. What we are very clear, people are not here to lobby for a particular item or recommend a particular course of action or advise us in a certain, or direct us in a certain way. And ultimately decision making is for yourself. So that's just my comment and response in terms of that one. I think we have the right mix. I'm glad we have diverse views, and you will hear diverse views, but you won't have people giving a facility, giving you an opportunity to advocate or recommend certain things. That's your remit.
And really important question. As you said, there has been some commentary in the public domain that we, that we can confidently say that the processes that underpin this assembly are the very same as the processes that underpin previous assemblies. If there is one nuance, we've no longer got an expert advisory group, even though our advisory group does have experts. It's now an advisory support group, and that nuance is to include people with diverse perspectives and backgrounds and opinions as well. So the one thing I will say is that my job as the Secretary is to ensure that this process, when we get to the end of it in October, we can stand over the integrity of that process. We can be confident in saying that there was fairness and balance in the proceedings. So how do we do that? It isn't by taking direction from any advisory group, it's by listening to the views of the advisory group, but also listening to the views of the member and the feedback of the members of this assembly. So at the end of Sunday, tomorrow, you will be spending 10 minutes filling in a questionnaire, which is a really vital part of this quality control process, right? And in that questionnaire, we will be asking you information individually. Did you feel there was fairness and balance in the proceedings? Did you feel there was bias? All of those important questions on how we quality control. So the ultimate arbiters of the credibility and integrity of this process are you, the members, and what you. So, in other words, the proof of the pudding will be in the eating. When there is debates, whether it's in relation to legal change or medical viewpoints, we will have fairness and balance in the people who speak from this podium to my left here, and you will be the ultimate judges of whether we have succeeded in that.
Okay, I'm just conscious of time. Trust me, I've managed to get through as many questions as we possibly could, and some questions were grouped together, so we've given extra time to that piece, which I think was important and useful. So if we're at a break time, it's 11:15, we're going to break. Can I ask you to be back at the tables very promptly, because we'll be live streaming again, back sitting down, ready to go for 11:30. Thank you.